So, Attack on Titan is getting a new ending. Yes, you heard me right, a second completely separate ending than the ending we just saw animated a couple of weeks ago. And for those of you who either didn't enjoy the manga ending or the anime ending or both, this is music to your ears. And listen, as somebody who had seriously conflicted feelings on the ending of AOT because I didn't like the manga ending, but I liked the anime ending a little bit more, this is huge news. Because while the anime ending did change a couple of things that happened in the manga ending that made for a somewhat massive improvement, most importantly changing Eren and Armin's conversation in the paths to not make Armin be like, oh yeah, thanks for being a mass murderer for us, Eren, and more actually shifting the blame of the rumbling onto himself, as he was also involved in the wars that built up to the rumbling, there are still some massive plot holes in the anime's ending. So while the tonal shift of Armin taking some of the blame of the rumbling and thanking Eren for showing him outside of the walls as opposed to thanking Eren for killing 80% of the human population are steps in the right direction, there's still things like the fact that the primordial life centipede shoots out of Eren's neck and Reiner wrestles it for a little bit, and then after Eren dies, it just kind of disappears. And it was like, Reiner, you were literally just battling against this giant centipede. Where did it go? There's also the fact that after Eren loses the centipede thing, which is apparently the founding titan ability, or just the essence of life itself, we're never really told that he's still somehow able to turn into a colossal titan, even though he no longer has the founding ability, and he doesn't have the colossal titan ability, so we really have no explanation for how he did that. And then there's the death baiting with Jean and Connie and all the Eldians. And there's the fact that the cycle of hatred doesn't get broken, so Eren killing 80% of the human population and sacrificing his life only accomplishes like 50 years of tentative peace. Well, at least in the manga, it's like 50 to 100 years of peace, but in the anime, it's like 100 to 1,000 years of peace, as the buildings in the post-credit scene on Paradise Island go from the simple, more rural-style house that they had during AOT's run to super futuristic cyberpunk skyscrapers. And while that could like technically happen in 50 years, we see that Mikasa lives a full life of peace. Well, at least we think that. Regardless, nothing really changes and 80% of the human population died for next to no reason. So there are some pretty glaring issues with both Attack on Titan's anime and manga ending, but the anime is a little bit better. Oh, also because Mappa absolutely cooked with the final episode, and the pacing and the music and the fights were absolutely gorgeous. And it's a lot easier to ignore problems with the story when there's pretty sounds and colors. But I am by far and away not the only person who was conflicted about Attack on Titan's ending, because while anime-only watchers were not nearly as upset about the ending of Attack on Titan as manga readers were, that's because objectively, they got a better product. Which raises the logical question, why do we need an alternative ending for Attack on Titan? Well, I would answer that question with the question, why wouldn't you want one? See, an alternative ending to Attack on Titan that addresses the plot holes and tries to end Attack on Titan in a more cohesive, understandable way would assuage the worries of those who felt they got burned by the manga's original ending, while those who enjoyed the original ending they got can just watch the original ending they got. So I view any additional endings to Attack on Titan kind of being a win-win, as it can allow for everybody to enjoy the ending of this legendary story equally. But where is all of this coming from? Is this alternative ending a manga or an anime? Is the manga done? Do we have a release date for the anime? Is it being done by Mappa? Is it fan-made? Did a different studio take over Attack on Titan? And maybe, more importantly than anything, what's the alternative ending? Well, we're going to be answering all those questions and more today, guys, but first, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to keep up to date with all things anime news, guys, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku is Anonymous, where me and Daddy Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week, this news very much included. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you guys want to look like somebody who keeps up with anime news, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So Attack on Titan is getting a second ending. Why would they do this? Why now? What's the ending gonna be? Is it canon? Is it getting animated? There's a lot of questions. See, because for a long time, basically ever since the manga ending was released for Attack on Titan, people have hypothesized that the anime would end differently than the manga. And actually, one of the hardest I've ever worked on a video was exploring the possibility of the anime having an anime-only ending. However, even though it was one of the hardest I've ever worked on a video, boy oh boy, do those views not come clicking in. In fact, it was a creation of that video and the video after that that convinced me we needed to make this page and not just post all of my other anime content on NC Hammer 23. Basically, in that video, I explored multiple plot points that happened both in the anime and the manga that are different from each other and might imply that the anime and the manga are not one-to-one copies of each other and are instead canon different dimensions that play into each other's story, which means that the manga is basically a prequel to everything that would happen in the anime, which is a sequel which would have a separate ending from the manga. And there was a fair amount of evidence to substantiate this point, and thus up until the second to last episode of Attack on Titan was released, there was still hope that this theory might just happen. However, when the second to last episode of Attack on Titan was released, we saw that it was a one-to-one adaptation of the manga, and thus we knew that the anime's ending would be a one-to-one adaptation of the manga. And while it technically wasn't that, and a couple of key changes were made in important pieces of conversation, for all intents and purposes, the anime had the same ending as the manga, but less people were upset about it because Armin's conversation was changed, and because the pacing, sound design, and fights were absolutely incredible. And when you're looking at an objectively wonderfully paced 90 minutes of animation and beautiful fights, it's hard to pick out certain moments and be like, oh yeah, that shouldn't happen. However, unfortunately, those of us who are holding on to the hopes of an anime-only ending felt those hopes slipping through our grasp. However, that's where Attack on Titan Requiem comes in. See, Attack on Titan Requiem is a rewrite of the last 3 chapters of Attack on Titan, those being chapters 137 through 140. I'm fully aware that Attack on Titan only ever goes to 139.5 because 140 means freedom in Japanese, and Eren never makes it to 140, freedom. If you didn't know that, it's an incredibly cruel joke by Isayama. Eren dies 139 chapters into the story because making it to 140 would imply he made it to freedom, and Isayama didn't want him to make it to freedom. However, fortunately for us, I guess Attack on Titan Requiem isn't really worried about Eren reaching 140 chapters, because while technically Attack on Titan Requiem is a rewrite of the last 3 chapters of Attack on Titan, it is actually going longer than 3 chapters, fleshing out the ending more and giving us less of a rushed feel as the story comes to its final head. But Attack on Titan Requiem has been coming out for a while now, so why are we talking about it right now? Well, because Attack on Titan Requiem just got an animated trailer and a release date for when the anime is gonna come out. Yes, that's right, you heard me. The rewrite of Attack on Titan's ending got an animated trailer and is going to be receiving an anime in fall 2024. That's like 9 months from now. So now, not only will Attack on Titan hold on to relevancy for at least another year, but also 9-ish months from now, we're going to be receiving an entirely new alternative animated ending to a legendary story. And whether you liked the ending or not, that is must-view watching. See, because here's the thing. If you liked the ending, you can watch the alternative ending and see if you like this ending more, and if you don't, you can be like, huh, that sucked. Good thing the first ending was good. And if you hated the first ending, you can watch this new alternative ending and hope you like it more. Really, when it comes down to it, if you're an Attack on Titan fan, there's no reason not to watch it. Now, there is one slight problem. Technically, Requiem is a fan-made rewrite, and therefore this rewrite has nothing to do with Isayama or MAPPA. Now listen, don't let that deter you from wanting to either read it or watch it one day, because as somebody who's read and watched every single episode and chapter of Attack on Titan, let me tell you, Requiem is very good. Not only is the art style almost a one-to-one copy of Isayama's, but all of the tones and plot points are exactly things that Isayama would have written if he had decided to end his story in a way that made a bit more sense. And not to mention that it was also shown to us in the teaser trailer that was released about 6 days ago, and that this fan-made alternative ending to Attack on Titan is going to have a pretty legendary cast of voice actors. And while I have a hard time believing that this fan-made project will be as well animated as MAPPA's final episode of Attack on Titan, everything that I saw from the trailer makes it look pretty good.
But Nick, if you're assuaging all of our worries about this fan-made project, what are the issues here?
Oh, I don't know. It's a small thing called copyright. Because genuinely, I find it pretty hard to believe that MAPPA is going to allow for their biggest moneymaker to be remade without any of that money going to them. See, while the concept of fan-made remakes of manga is not a new thing at all, as Dragon Ball Super is being almost entirely remade by fans and it is way better, the concept of fans reanimating scenes from their favorite anime is a bit newer. Obviously, we've seen animators take to YouTube to animate manga fights and things like that. They're creating content that currently doesn't already exist. However, if you begin to make an alternative ending to Attack on Titan that you release somewhere like, oh, I don't know, YouTube, MAPPA does have some pretty sturdy grounds to stand on when it comes to copyrighting that video. Now, the closest facsimile to Attack on Titan Requiem that we've seen in recent years would be the Dragon Ball YouTube video we got about a year ago, Legend to Dragon Ball Film. A 12-ish minute fan animation about Goku, Broly, and Vegeta battling it out in a tournament of power. That was a fan animation alternate ending to the possibility of Broly, Vegeta, and Goku's fight. And while I can't say as to whether or not that video made the creator any money, as using the names and likeness of all these different characters would probably mean that the studio who created all of these characters would probably be making the majority of that money on YouTube, the video never got taken down. So there is a possibility that Attack on Titan Requiem would be able to stand. And also, mind you, this is all assuming that MAPPA still exists in a year, as they currently have way bigger fish to fry than a couple of fans reanimating their biggest moneymaker. In fact, if I was MAPPA, I would absolutely let a film like this exist, because if people don't like it, they're gonna go back and watch your ending again. But considering the fact that Japan has recently been cracking down on companies that abuse their workers, and multiple animators have taken to Reddit and Twitter to talk about how abused they are by MAPPA, there's a possibility that in 9 months, MAPPA won't even be around to crack down on this video. So I would say the chances are fairly good that Requiem gets its air date in fall 2024, and we all get to watch it. And when we do all watch it in fall 2024, what are some of the key key differences that we're going to be looking for in the story that we're being shown. Are the differences between Requiem and the main storyline that massive, or are they more minor touches like the anime did for the manga? Well, as somebody who's read both AOT and AOT Requiem, let me tell you. More specifically, let's get into breaking down everything that happens in Attack on Titan Requiem and how that differs from Attack on Titan's main storyline. Now, mind you, the differences are pretty massive, so at a certain point, it's not even worth comparing the two storylines. And if you don't want to have Attack on Titan Requiem spoiled for you and you want to wait until fall 2024 to watch it when it comes out, then, skip the rest of this video. I mean, like and comment and subscribe before you leave, but leave. So like I've already covered, Attack on Titan Requiem is a rewrite of the last 3 chapters of Attack on Titan. And therefore, Attack on Titan Requiem picks up at the beginning of chapter 137, where in the standard Attack on Titan storyline, we see Armin having a conversation with Zeke in the paths. And in Attack on Titan Requiem, that conversation is still happening. However, there are 2 more people present for said conversation. See, because while Armin and Zeke are sitting there in the paths having a conversation, there are also Eren and young Eren hanging out with them in the paths. Now by Eren, I mean long-haired, time to end the world Eren, and by young Eren, I mean the first Eren we ever saw. And instead of the chapter directly opening up with a conversation between Armin and Zeke, it actually opens up with old Eren showing young Eren around the paths. And in fact, older Eren leads younger Eren to the founding tree at the center of the paths. Now all of this is happening while Zeke is giving the life speech from chapter 137. You know, the speech when Zeke introduced the giant centipede? However, the speech that Zeke is giving in Requiem is different than the one that he gives in the main storyline. See, because in the main storyline, Zeke's story about how life began focuses on propagation, and how all life exists solely to propagate. Now, one could say in the main storyline, Zeke is centering his conversation about life around propagation because of his euthanation plan, as Zeke wanted to use the power of the Founding Titan to make all Eldians sterile and therefore get rid of their ability to propagate. However, in Requiem, the speech that Zeke is giving actually revolves around humanity's desire to find the meaning of life, and how our consciousness put us on a perpetual conquest to be special and find the meaning of life and rally against death. And yet, in spite of all humanity trying to find the purpose of life, every living being dying and being reborn and evolving, one entity has not changed since the day it was formed, and that is the centipede monster. And it's at this point that Zeke tells Armin Ymir's story. Most specifically, the part of her story where she's running away from the dogs and arrows and stumbles into the Founding Tree's cave. And thus Armin gets to see Ymir gain the Founding Titan's abilities. And since young Eren and old Eren are also in the paths, they also see this. And Zeke takes Ymir running away from these dogs and these arrows is her trying to avoid death. It's something that all of his time in the paths has made him realize is inevitable. And with Zeke coming to this realization that death is inevitable, he realizes that there's truly no meaning to life, because any meaning you find will be snuffed out when you die. Zeke then goes on to say that if Ymir had just given into death in this moment prior to finding the Founding Titan tree, that none of the problems they're currently facing would exist, that they would have been spared from this existence if Ymir had just given in to death, if she had thrown away meaning in life. And thus Zeke goes on to say that the paths were made as a symbol of Ymir's unwillingness to let go of life. Since the only life that Ymir knew was subservience to the king, she continued to serve him in order to one day find meaning. Now, also in Requiem, it's agreed upon by Armin and Zeke that the reason that Ymir would do all of this is in order to find meaning in life, and possibly love. And since this is only a rewrite of chapters 137 to 139.5, Eren in Requiem was also able to get through to Ymir when Zeke couldn't. However, what Eren offers Ymir in Requiem is freedom, something that old Eren is currently showing young Eren in the paths. As you know how Eren was displayed to have the ability to slide through time to reach out to people like Armin and Mikasa and basically everybody who he knew on Eldia, Eren is currently doing that with his younger self. And you know how when he was having that conversation with Armin, they were able to go a bunch of different places, like the shore of the beach that they went to, or in the massive footsteps of the Colossal Titans? Yeah, it's basically what old Eren is doing with young Eren now. He's showing him the sights. And while he's showing him the sights, old Eren is radicalizing young Eren, basically telling him, actually, I'm going to read it word for word here because I think the manga does the best job at it. This power has shown me the paths ahead, branches of things that have passed, what could have been, and what can't be changed, and the paths built on their plans that I reject, leaving only one. That is to say that old Eren is telling young Eren all about the powers that he now has through the power of the Founding Titan, and how through the powers of these Founding Titans, he's basically able to see all possible futures, but how all of these possible futures he see, every single one of them except for one, ends with a cycle of hatred never closing. And thus Eren has found one future and one future alone where humanity humanity doesn't continue to kill each other. And that path he believes is freedom, and that path he will march. Old Aaron then tells young Aaron that he'll forget everything that old Aaron told him, but when he wakes up, he'll remember how this conversation made him feel. And after this, Requiem does something that the Attack on Titan's original manga simply didn't do, but something that they addressed in the anime, and Aaron reveals to young Aaron that he's tried to change the futures by affecting the things around him. However, every single time he changes the things around him, the futures in front of him still include the cycle of hatred. More specifically, he says, "At first I tried to save the ones dearest to me by trying to change the flow of paths. I even tried to stop some things from happening. But then I realized to achieve that one goal, sacrifice was unavoidable. To assert our birthright, I am prepared to sacrifice the world." See, the biggest difference between Requiem and Attack on Titan's original manga is that Aaron is the bad guy. There's no, I saw the future and I had to do it and I wanted to make you guys a good guys so everybody would listen to you and peace would come after my death. No, Aaron in Requiem believes that the rumbling is the only way to save the world, not simply a way to make the rest of the world weaker and to make those who killed him the most important people on Earth so that everybody would listen to them during peace talks after 80% of humanity died. Aaron, through the power of the Founding Titan, has found one possible future that has no cycle of hatred. However, unfortunately, to break the cycle of hatred, the world needs to be sacrificed. There's no ulterior motives or plot twist. It's just that Aaron thinks the rumbling is the right thing to do, like we thought he did for many chapters. And it's revealed that Aaron isn't only telling this to younger Aaron, because as we begin to pan out, we see that Armin is also listening to Aaron's plans. And it's at this point that young Aaron realizes that Armin is there as well. And young Aaron runs up to Armin excitedly, yelling about freedom and how they're no longer to have to live like cattle in a pen. However, Armin, infuriated by the fact that Aaron is trying to radicalize his younger self, pushes young Aaron's hands off him and says, "No, I won't allow you to do this." And Armin and Aaron, instead of having a deep conversation about how Aaron is massacring 80% of humanity to try and make Armin look like a good guy, have a deep philosophical, very angry conversation about whether or not the rumbling is the right thing to do. And somewhat unsurprisingly, their opinions haven't changed. Armin still believes that the rumbling is the wrong thing to do, but Aaron believes it's the only path to freedom. And when eventually this conversation reaches a boiling point, they grab each other, but when they grab each other, something funny happens. See, when they grab each other, Aaron remembers a moment he had with Historia, and Armin gets to see it, as he's trying to once again see the future that he saw when he came into contact with Historia during the meddling ceremony. However, in this timeline, Aaron has keyed both Hanji and Historia into the fact that when he came into contact with Historia, he saw a vision, and thus Historia is asking Aaron, does it make sense now? But Aaron is still confused by the visions that he's seeing, which is disappointing to everybody in the room because they believe it could be a key to figuring out the Titan problem. However, it's at this point that they realize that everything they've ever accomplished, they've done with next to no information, and all that they've ever really needed to accomplish everything they've accomplished thus far was passion, will, and hope. And thus Aaron not understanding the visions is fine. However, a little bit further down the line, we see how Aaron was able to recruit both Flock and Historia to his side. And so the conversation he has with Flock is kind of cool. If you like Flock as a character, I guess, fine, go read it. Basically just Aaron being like, you got the stomach to kill humanity, and he's like, that doesn't sound super chill, but I guess we can do it. But the conversation he has with Historia is infinitely more interesting and very different from what happens in the original story. See, because in Requiem, Historia doesn't have a baby with some random dude. Historia has a baby with Aaron. See, in this flashback, Aaron and Historia are talking about a possible plan hatched by the Azumabedo, and how basically that plan would have Historia marrying somebody from the Azumabedo and having their children, making a political alliance between Paradise Island and Azumabedo. And they both agree that this political alliance would probably be what's best for Paradise Island. And Historia, while she agrees this is what would be best for the island, wonders if it would be selfish if she pulled out of this agreement. And when Aaron reveals that his true plan is to do the rumbling and kill almost all of humanity, Historia pleads with him to not act on his own and to not abandon her, which is when she offers to have a child with Aaron. However, after Historia accepts the fact that Aaron is going to enact the rumbling, she tells Aaron that she won't tell anybody what his plans are, considering the fact that they've already gone this far, and she clutches her stomach, implying that she's pregnant with Aaron's child. But this infuriates Armin. One, because Aaron didn't tell anybody, including Mikasa, and two, because Armin believes that Aaron having a child proves that he's a hypocrite. And if Aaron had simply come to Armin before he decided to enact the rumbling, they could have figured out a better answer together. And thus, instead of of destroying the cycle of hatred, all Eren has done is guaranteed his child to be the child of a monster. Now, it's a possibility that Eren had a child with Historia in order to make somebody who he could pass the Founding Titan's abilities down to after he dies in 5 or so years, as that child would have royal blood and would be able to use the Founding Titan's abilities at the peak of its powers. And thus, the child that Eren and Historia have could continue to protect Paradise Island after Eren is gone. But this just continues Eren and Armin's argument. There's no, oh, I was forced to do this by the sands of fate. And while this conversation is going on in the paths between Armin and Eren, on top of Eren's bony little skeleton squad of Mikasa, Connie, Jean, Levi, Gabby, everybody is still fighting against the myriad of different Titan shifters. However, in Requiem, instead of Armin galvanizing the past Titan shifters that they knew to help this squad battle against Eren and get to his neck, Eren subconsciously, while having his conversation with Armin, actually slows down all of the Titans that they're trying to fight on his back. And thus there's no real plot armor moment of Armin finding a whole new army of people to help them battle against Eren. It's more just revealed that Eren doesn't want to kill his friends. In fact, Eren says that to Armin. The reason that Eren is having this conversation with Armin in the first place is because Eren is trying one last final time to convince Armin to join his side because he doesn't want to fight his best friend. And therefore, while he's having this conversation with Armin, he slows down all of the Titan shifters on his back because he doesn't want to kill his close friends. However, while all this is going on, the Okapi that's holding Armin in its mouth jumps into Bertholt's mouth. Now, mind you, at this moment in time, Bertholt's not on their side like he is in the main manga. And thus, Connie and Mikasa need to find a way to get the Okapi out of Bertholt's mouth. However, when they get close to Bertholt, he starts releasing steam, like when Armin was coming to kill it. And since they can't get around the steam, but all of the other Titan shifters have seemed to slow down for at least a little bit, Connie and Armin come up with a plan to cut Bertholt down from Eren's ribs and have him fall and spit out the Okapi, which they do, and which he does. The Okapi then tries to run away, but Annie gets in its way, and they cut the Okapi down, releasing Armin. Now, while in the main story's timeline, this wasn't entirely necessary, as Armin had managed to galvanize all the troops in the path, so him being released by the Okapi really didn't mean all that much. Like, obviously, him being released by the Okapi allowed him to eventually turn into the Colossal Titan, which stopped Eren in his tracks. But within the confines of this specific moment, it didn't really mean all that much to cut down the Okapi. However, in Requiem, it does hold a lot more weight. See, because once Eren realizes that everybody on his back is getting closer to killing him, he has to leave the paths. But he leaves Armin in the paths, kind of like how he left Zeke in the paths, to exist there for years. And Eren doing this is incredibly hypocritical, but also speaks to his character, at least in Requiem. See, Eren, when he starts the rumbling, tells the squad of people that want to stop the rumbling that he won't try to stop them, that they have a free choice to try and kill him and end the rumbling, because Eren is dedicated to one thing and one thing alone: freedom. And therefore, Armin, Mikasa, Jean, Connie, Levi, all of them have the freedom of choice to try and stop the rumbling. However, by Eren pulling Armin into the paths and leaving him there, he is stripping him of his freedom to try and fight against Eren. So if Armin hadn't been cut out of the Okapi, he would have stayed in the paths forever, like Zeke. And then Armin, upon being released from the mouth of the Okapi, tells everybody that he can't transform into the Colossal Titan here. See, while the original plan in the main manga was for Armin to explode, turning into the Colossal Titan somewhere in the middle ribcage of Eren, Armin reveals to everybody that that plan won't work. And instead, his time in the paths has keyed him in to where both Eren and Zeke are located on this giant skeleton monster. And there and only there will Armin turn into the Colossal Titan, as Armin in Requiem is the person who comes to the resolution that Eren needs to die. Not Levi, not Gabby, not Jean, not Connie, it's Armin. And Armin is the person who has to convince Mikasa. And thus the anti-Jaeger squad, all on top of Falco, begin to head to the location where Armin believes that Zeke and Eren are. However, as they begin to get closer to that location, which is somewhere around Eren's neck, they see a scout falling from around Eren's mouth. A scout wearing all of the anti-Jaegerist gear that they're all wearing. And as you take a head count of all the people on Falco's back, the only possible person it could be is Jean, who we haven't seen for about a half chapter since he was saved by Peak. If you remember in the main manga, there's a moment where Jean is hanging from Eren's ribcage and a bunch of the Titan shifters are heading towards him. In Requiem, that's the last time we see him before possibly now seeing him falling, bleeding from Eren's skeletal body. But then again, we don't know if it's Jean. He's just the only person not on Falco's back. Unfortunately, we still don't know if it's Jean because that's all that's currently out. Now, obviously, since the animated version of all of this is coming out in fall 2024, that means that the manga will end by fall 2024, which means we'll probably have the final chapter for Requiem sometime soon. But as it currently stands, that's all we know. Now for the million-dollar question. Based off everything we currently have from Requiem, do I enjoy it more than Attack on Titan's original ending? And my answer is Yeah, there's just too many plot holes in Attack on Titan's original ending. Eren being a slave at the time, but being able to direct the Smiling Titan away from Bertholdt to his mother is one of the craziest contradictions I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, was Eren forced to direct the Smiling Titan at his mother? And if he could direct the Smiling Titan at his mother, that means he could change the future. Now, in the anime, they technically do a better job at explaining what's going on here, as they say that anything that Eren tried to do to change the future didn't end up changing the future. However, if Eren had let the Smiling Titan eat Bertholdt, that would have changed the future. So I believe that Requiem does a better job at explaining the Founding Titan's powers and how they would pertain to Eren and his ability to choose a path that he believed was the most fortuitous for Earth. And I also believe that one of the biggest weaknesses with Attack on Titan's ending was the flip-floppiness of the themes and motivations of certain characters. Like, even in the anime, Armin going from, oh, the rumbling is all Eren's fault, to assuming a little bit of guilt in the rumbling was a cool moment, but it was also kind of a big switch for Armin. Though not as big of a switch as him going, oh, the rumbling is the worst thing that could ever happen, but thanks Eren for being a mass murderer. And thus the tone staying consistent for both Armin and Eren heading into the final chapters of the rumbling, in that Eren believes that the rumbling is the only course to set humanity free, and Armin believes that the only thing that he can do is stop Eren, I believe makes more sense story-wise. And I believe Eren being a slave to fate and trying to kill 80% of humanity to prop up his friends is a somewhat good way to try and redeem him as a main character, but I think not redeeming him as a main character is actually an infinitely more interesting storyline, because redeeming Eren as a main character is like trying to have your cake and eat it too. You can be like, oh, look, we made our main character an antagonist, but they were actually a good guy the whole time. And while that has been absolutely nailed in circumstances like Code Geass, it just felt kinda tacked on in Attack on Titan's main storyline. But do I like Attack on Titan Requiem's ending so much more than Attack on Titan's original ending that I'm willing to consider it the canon finish to Attack on Titan? No, but it is really well done and a really fun read, and I fully anticipate on watching it when it comes out in fall 2024. But what do you guys think about Requiem? Are you going to treat it like an official rewrite, or is it just something for you to enjoy? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. Mikasa is really the big loser of Requiem. I mean, like, Jean dies, and she ends up having a baby with Jean in Attack on Titan, and Eren knocked up Historia. Yikes.